Baltimore Ravens sent a clear message with their trade of Jaire Alexander, and it's one that's very firm. We talk about that and so much more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Ravens. Welcome into the show. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this Sunday bonus edition of the show, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We have 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage for you. And thanks so much to all the everydayers, the first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. We have a jam-packed episode today, and look, we're going to be talking a lot about the news from yesterday. The Ravens trading Jaire Alexander to the Philadelphia Eagles. And in the first part of the show, we're going to talk about the clear message the Ravens sent with that move, as well as diving into what it could mean for the team moving forward in the trade department and just the trade in general. You know, what does it mean for Jaire? Why did they make this move? So we'll dive into all that in the first part of the show. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk about, with the move, Baltimore being in a great position to make moves to actually bring some guys into the team. And then finally, we'll dive into some more trade targets, because that's a big conversation as the deadline approaches on Tuesday. I want to tell everybody and remind everyone, today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. Well, there's the news from yesterday, right? We did a whole instant reaction show on it. If you want to go back to hear my instant thoughts on it, you can listen to the instant reaction show. Jaire Alexander traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. It was Jaire and a 7th-round pick for a 6th-round selection. So Baltimore essentially upgrading a pick, but they actually are getting a pick in this year's draft and setting a pick in next year's draft, because it was a 2027 7th-rounder for a 2026 6th-rounder. So the Ravens, they are adding a pick in this year's draft. The Ravens are slated to have a maximum of I believe, 11 picks in this draft when you factor in all the comp picks that they could potentially get here. You know, they're projected 2, I believe, for one Patrick McCary, one Brandon Stevens. I think there's another free agent. It's slipping my mind right now, but the Ravens are projected for, again, double-digit draft picks. And look, was I expecting to do a bonus episode on Saturday, an instant reaction show, a trade reaction show? I was bracing for it. Was I expecting the trade to be the Ravens trading a piece away? Not really. I mean, and this is something I said I was on board with the Ravens doing if they didn't have a plan for Jaire, right? Where I said on Thursday on social media, if you're not going to use them, just trade them away. Try to get something back from them that can help the team. I had said to try to package them for a D lineman, O lineman, edge guy. They didn't end up doing that, but it ends up pretty disappointing Jaire tenure. But it does send a message of, if it's not working, you're out of here. You're done. You know, they did that with Odafe Owe. They have done that now with Jaire Alexander, and that is what Eric DeCosta does, by the way. This is not the first time this message has been sent. It's not the second, the third, the fourth, or the fifth either. It's been sent a lot of times, but it continues to be reiterated. And in a season where the Ravens are trying to field as good of a roster as they can, well, we can call it like it is. Jaire is a very talented player, but kind of was a weird tenure for him. He didn't really play a lot. He was a scratch in all but 2 games. The Buffalo game in week 1, where he was atrocious, and then that Texans game, he had the injury in training camp, which put him behind the 8 ball. Ravens were trying to work him back into shape. Clearly shouldn't have played in that Buffalo game in the first place. Had multiple plays that cost them that game, but then it was like, all right, now he's going to work back into game shape even more. And then he was a healthy scratch. So the plan that I thought was going to happen is they were going to have him ready for January. But in order to have him ready for January, you have to play him in the games to get him acclimated with the system and the defense and not like hold him out. So Jaire, I think, is a really good player still. Like, we don't really know. And again, Howie Roseman doing Howie Roseman things. If he goes and balls out in Philly, I'm going to be pretty upset, because I wanted Jaire on this team for so long. And it finally happens. Again, I'm on a steal of a deal. Still was a great deal, in my opinion, getting a player and taking that swing for $4 million up to $6 million. That's a swing you take 10 times out of 10, 100 times out of 100. But again, corner depth is what they need, and they just traded away some corner depth, but clearly they favored other players over him, like Chidobe Awuzie and TJ Tampa. Backup corners aren't really getting a lot of run right now anyway because of the way the Ravens utilize their safeties with a lot of 3 safety looks. And, Jaire, I'm sure this was definitely mutual where Jaire wanted an opportunity to play and the Ravens didn't have that opportunity or didn't want to give Jaire that opportunity. So I think it is a loss for them, but it's not a loss in terms of he was providing anything for them. He played, and I think I can't remember it's anywhere from 40 to 60-ish snaps for them over the course of his tenure with the Ravens. I mean, it's not like he was giving them anything on the field. It's more so the idea of Jaire they're losing as opposed to Jaire himself. But again, that idea is very intriguing because corner depth is important. We talked about that on the Instant Reaction show, but it also gives a little bit of context maybe to some of the reports we've been hearing over the course of the last couple of days and couple of weeks about where the Ravens are interested in the trade market, because we heard a lot about how the Ravens from multiple insiders have been looking not only at defensive help, but specifically at the cornerback position. And, we were kind of sitting here on the show, at least I was wondering hey, corner, it's not really your biggest need right now. You have Marlon and Jaire and Nate and Chidobe Awuzie, TJ Tampa, et cetera. But maybe the Ravens just want a corner they feel like they can trust more. Now, if they do make a move for another corner, it's probably going to be a player who is probably a little less talented than Jaire Alexander is, but maybe can be on the field and help you more than they thought that Jaire could. I'm also curious to hear what Jaire has to say about the whole situation. Jaire's never been one to hold in his feelings about things, and, he's always been someone to speak his mind. So if he felt like he was wronged by the organization, I'm curious to hear if he was, or if it was just kind of like hey, wrong opportunity, appreciate my time there, this, that, and the other. I'm curious to hear the answer, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Ravens traded for another cornerback here, one that is less talented than Jaire, but they feel like is a better fit for what they want and probably is a little less injury prone. Because that's the thing with Jaire, right? He's injury prone. Injuries have followed him his entire career. It's unfortunate because he's such a talented player, but I would have liked to see him get a little more run. I also, in the trade package, would have liked to see a player coming back. But the Ravens do get multiple good things out of the deal, and they have set themselves up well. And we'll talk about that a lot more coming up in the second part of the show. But before we go into the break, I want to quickly lay out these things because I think it's important to put them in for context. The Ravens, Brad McFarland, Ravens salary cap. We've had him on the show a ton. He does a great job. The Alexander trade for the Ravens, it'll create $2 million in cap space. So the Ravens already, Brian laid out on Halloween that the Ravens enter their mini buy with a little over $14 million in cap space. You can now add in $2 million there. Plus, you can add someone to the 53 to replace him. That roster spot is now free. So if they were to trade for somebody, maybe they would have just outright cut Jaire. I don't know the situation there. But clearly, Jaire was not a part of the plans for the Ravens. And again, if he wasn't a part of the plans, getting anything back for him and clearing out the cap space, clearing out the roster space is a win. But I just wish we would have seen him get a couple of weeks of action before they made this move, because there is a realistic possibility he goes to Philadelphia and is a beast for them. There's also the possibility he's not. It goes both ways. But the message here is if it's not working, it's not working, and we're going to move off of you because we need guys in here that are going to work for us. And that's the message Eric DeCosta and this Ravens team are sending. And guess what? They have to send that message because much like in 2019, when they sent the same message over and over and over again, they do not have time to kind of dilly-dally and waste with, is this guy going to work? Is this guy not going to work? They clearly were set on this is not going to work out. They weren't going to play him. I'm sure Jaire was getting kind of antsy and maybe a little frustrated from not playing. I'm sure he was. Brought into Baltimore, he and Lamar obviously had that connection together. That's probably why he signed. In fact, it was one of the reasons why he signed in Baltimore, probably for less than he could have gotten. I think other teams like Carolina were involved and maybe Miami, if I remember off the top of my head right. And he took less money in Baltimore. So a very weird end to a weird situation with Jaire Alexander. Again, dating back the last calendar year, is that a lot of these weird situations, and not that Jaire was disgruntled, at least not to anybody's knowledge publicly. He handled all of it like a pro. We didn't hear anything come out about it. So I give Jaire a lot of credit for that. At the end of the day, the Ravens have had these situations over the past year, and it's been kind of interesting. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll continue to dive into messages that the Ravens sent with this Jaire Alexander trade, as well as The Ravens putting themselves in position to make a decent amount of moves before the deadline on Tuesday. Stay tuned, plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is the sequence with special teams, defense, and offense leading to Ravens points. You got Jordan Stout pinning the Dolphins back deep in their own territory. Alohi Gilman forcing a huge fumble, and then Lamar Jackson to Mark Andrews, that connection, putting a touchdown on the board for Baltimore. Those are huge momentum plays. Turnovers is something the Ravens have struggled with, and conversion rates as well. So that sequence, again, team effort, team win for this Ravens team, and that hopefully moves this team forward as they look to continue getting back on track with a playoff push and even moving the fan base forward. That'd be really, really good as well. So when you follow, it moves you. The unexpected is only the beginning, and just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout, and it keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. And in the NBA, I'm a big Denver Nuggets guy, and for the Nuggets right now on FanDuel, they are plus 700 to win the championship. That's the third best odds on FanDuel. Only ahead of the Nuggets are the Cleveland Cavaliers at plus 650 and the Oklahoma City Thunder at plus 200. And I like those odds for Denver because I like the moves the Nuggets made in the offseason, and they're continuing to gel early in the season. So right now, FanDuel's giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving right along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Sunday bonus edition of the show. No Ravens football today because the Ravens already took care of business in week number 9. They defeated the Miami Dolphins 28-6. They moved to 3-5. So it's a stress-free Sunday. We love those here in Baltimore, especially when the Ravens take care of their business. We have you covered regardless of if the Ravens win, lose, or tie. We have you covered with 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens covers. The regular show is Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. Plus, we do have bonus episodes on the weekend when the headlines permit, and there are a lot of bonus episodes during the season because there are a lot of headlines. We also have instant reaction shows like we did yesterday to breaking news. We also do instant reaction shows after games. Plus, we do watch-alongs during games, so you can react to the game with me for every single play. We have the Locked On Ravens squad show twice per week. Myself, Sam and Joker, and former Ravens receiver Kadri Ismail. So much Ravens coverage and content here for you. But let's talk about the Ravens putting themselves in a pretty great position to make some moves ahead of the deadline. Now, they've already made a couple. They made the Odafe Owe trade. They made the Jaire Alexander trade. But, this team needs to get some guys in. They need to get some guys in that can help compete. Alohi Gilman in that Owe trade, great addition, has moved Kyle Hamilton around the defense, and Gilman himself has come up with a couple of huge plays so far in his short Ravens tenure. But I'm talking about trading off of some of these draft picks. And we talked about this on the Instant Reaction show yesterday. The Ravens, with all the picks they're projected, again, double digit, there's no shot that you're going to get that many guys on the roster. And I just found out that I still had the graphic. I thought I got rid of it after I found out I had it the first time, but I found out again I still had the graphic for the Ravens draft class. And when looking over it, the Ravens, they had their 11-player class, right? We went over this yesterday. There was no way 11 guys were making this roster. Now, 2 of them, obviously, with Kone and Longerbeam, the corners, they were lost due to unfortunate injuries. But, who's to say that they would have made or not made the roster if they were healthy? And Garrett Dellinger didn't make it outright. So 8 of their 11 draft picks made the roster this season. If you put together another double-digit plus pick draft class, to me, it's a waste of assets. It's a waste of opportunity. You have an opportunity to help your team win now, and depending on who you trade for, could help you for the next handful of seasons if a guy sticks around. After you trade for him, a la Roquan Smith, you have an opportunity here to use assets that probably aren't going to help you to actually turn them into guys that will. And there are a lot of different ways that they can do that, but this Jaire move, again, with freeing up the roster spot, freeing up the cap space, and even freeing up opportunity, Those are three things right off the bat that the Ravens can utilize in their favor by the time Tuesday rolls around. Do they have to trade every single draft pick away? No, they don't. Do they have to use every single dollar cap space? No, they don't. But there's an avenue here for Baltimore because I had said earlier, okay, probably 1 to 2 moves is realistic, and that's probably where it falls. 1 is probably what's going to happen, but I could see 2. I have now upped that after this Jaire move to 2 to 3. I want to see at least 2 moves from this Ravens team, if not 3. 3 still seems a little steep considering, but I think that they can make it happen because we know the Ravens have multiple positions where they can address and add somebody that can help them. We talked on yesterday, the bonus episode we did in the morning where the Ravens have been linked insider-wise, not just corner like we talked about, but they've been linked to edge guys. They've been linked to defensive line help. Insiders have said to expect the Ravens to make 1 to 2 moves. Like, the Ravens are gearing up for something here that I can't believe otherwise. We know the Ravens love their draft picks. We know the Ravens love their draft capital, but Baltimore's projected for 5 fifth-round picks this year. They don't need 5 fifth-round picks. I don't need to see the Ravens pick 6 times in the 4th round again or 5 times in the 5th round again. They can still have those, because we know they love picking guys on day 3 and trying to find those diamonds in the rough. But you have real opportunities to get in guys, whether it's a veteran, and this kind of goes into our trade target conversation, like a Kevin Zeitler or a Calais Campbell or a Matt Judon, former Raven tour, bring them all back. Those guys aren't going to cost you a lot. It's not like you have to give up a 2nd-round pick for those guys. It probably cost you a 5th or a 6th. Maybe that 6th you got for Jaire, you could flip to Tennessee for Kevin Zeitler, or you could flip to Arizona for Calais Campbell. Those are the types of moves that I want to see Baltimore making. But then there's also, on top of it, could they make a decently sized splash? I'm not expecting a guy like a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett or that Micah Parsons type player to be available this deadline. And even if they were, while I would love it if the Ravens made that move, it's just not their MO. But kind of like a Quinnen Williams, I'd trade a 2 and a 4 for him. Like some of those top tier guys that aren't going to be like the big Micah Parsons move, but probably a tier or 2 below that one, but still classifies as a big one. You make one of those moves and then 1 to 2 of those smaller, like Zeitler Campbell type moves, veteran type moves, that sets you up really, really well because, I get that Baltimore wants to trust their guys. They like their guys. We hear that all the time. I understand it. I get it. It's just, you have to believe in your guys, but there's a limit to that, in my opinion, where it's not just believing anymore. It's delusion. And I think we've gotten to that point in a couple positions, one being the guard spot, but Daniel Falele was the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results, right? That's the saying. We've gotten to that point with the guard position. Not only Falele, by the way, I'm not trying to single him out, but Voorhees as well, right? Voorhees and Falele. Now, can they trade for 2 guards? Probably not. Even trading for 1. Every team needs good offensive linemen. No one wants to get rid of them. But trading for an offensive lineman during the season is extremely, extremely difficult, regardless of how good or bad the team is you're trading for or with, right? It just is what it is. So there's no guarantee Zeitler even gets moved by Tennessee whatsoever. We also know the history with the whole Derrick Henry situation and other stuff with Tennessee and Baltimore. So, who knows if that's even an option. But there are multiple other guys that you could bring in here. Doesn't have to be one. You don't have to set your sights on just 1 or 2 guys. And if those guys go off the board, boom, you're done. You can have plan A, plan B, but you can have plan C, plan D, plan E, plan F. You can go all, maybe even down the alphabet. You can go plan Z. Because there are so many guys I feel like can fit this Baltimore Ravens team. And I think that Baltimore can take advantage of that, where you don't have to be stuck on 1 or 2 guys. You can really extend your arms and put your feelers out to a lot of different teams with a lot of different players. Coming up with the final part of the show, we'll talk about some more of those guys. I think it's really intriguing how many guys could fit this team and what types of trades it would take to get them. So stay tuned. We got plenty coming your way here on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by Rugiet. Let's be real, making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. When it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rugiet comes in. Rugiet.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rugiet makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified doctor 100% online, no awkward waiting rooms. no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. Visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNFL so they know we sent you. Rugiet, stop making excuses and start making moves. Continuing on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on the Sunday bonus edition of the show. Hopefully everybody's enjoyed their weekend so far, and we can all wrap it up on this Sunday with stress-free football, which is really exciting. The Ravens back at it next week against the Minnesota Vikings. That will be next Sunday, so only one stress-free Sunday for now. But even still, Baltimore 3-5, that's a lot better than this team was at 1 week ago. Vibes are night and day considering where we were at this time last week. So appreciate everybody for being here. We're 5 days a week plus more here on Locked On Ravens. If you have a friend or a family member who wants daily Ravens coverage, maybe he's a Ravens fan and wants the Ravens perspective on something, be sure to send them over here our way on Locked On Ravens. You can also follow me on social media at ChaosStriker34 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as well. Let's talk about some more trade targets, right? We've talked about guys like Kevin Zeitler, Calais Campbell. We've dove into guys like Quinnen Williams, some of those bigger targets as well. But there are a lot of different guys. So mention guys like Matt Judon, those edge rushers that probably wouldn't cost you a lot of money or a lot of capital, contract. Because you got to also factor in contractually too, right? It's not only going to cost you draft picks or whatnot, but the money is going to have to be a factor here. So for a player like Bradley Chubb, for example, and actually I'll do some quick little live research on Locked On Ravens with his contract. So let's get those contract details up real quick. Bradley Chubb, his contract right now, so this extension or this contract just kicked in with Miami. He has a $19 million base salary for 2026 and an $18 million base salary for 2027. So the Ravens have to figure out something there if they were to make a move for Bradley Chubb. I think Bradley Chubb would be an amazing addition to this Ravens group, an amazing addition. But you have to also factor in contract. So it's money, it's draft capital. Could a Jalen Phillips be someone that's a little more manageable to get for the Dolphins? And if we look at Jalen Phillips right now and kind of what his contract is, the Ravens would have to worry about the remainder of his base salary, which to start this season was $13.25 million. But then he's a unrestricted free agent. So then they'd have to work out an extension. And what's that extension going to look like? I don't know. So it depends on situations. I could even see maybe a Zach Sealer getting traded to Baltimore. That'd be pretty cool. Interior defensive lineman also could include, I mentioned Campbell, but Dexter Lawrence, maybe Jeffrey Simmons. There's a couple of other options, but those are probably the main ones if you want to swing a little bit bigger. I think Campbell just makes a lot of sense, though, personally. You can also look to, on the edge, Arden Key, potentially out in Tennessee. He's a guy that makes a lot of sense. Jermaine Johnson's probably going to cost you a little bit more. Will McDonald, if he's available, probably going to cost you a little bit more. Offensive line, I really only see Kevin Zeitler. I saw someone in the chat mention maybe Cesar Ruiz, that someone who checked in a couple days ago in the chat. So that could be another option for them, but they don't really need a wide receiver. They don't need a running back. They obviously need a quarterback, any of those. You can really focus trench-wise for this Ravens team right now. And so I'd be pretty curious to see where the Ravens go, because there are other options where like a Kayvon Thibodeau also could make sense, right? I think Thibodeau might be that happy medium for the Ravens. And there was a guy that's not going to cost you like a second round pick or anything, but he's not going to cost you like a seventh rounder, kind of in the middle, right? Now, one intriguing guy, it's definitely not going to happen, but I just want to throw it out there anyway, because why not? Why not? The absolute dream for me, my actual dream realistic scenario for the Ravens is Kevin Zeitler and Calais Campbell. The absolute, completely out of the realm of possibility dream for me is Trey Hendrickson. Somehow interdivision trade, you make that deal with a division rival if you're Cincinnati. Never going to happen. I think they would ask for the world from Baltimore. Cincinnati would, because it's in division. And Baltimore just wouldn't give it up for Trey Hendrickson. I personally, whatever, if it's like a first rounder and a young player that's not going to be too consequential, Trey Hendrickson would catapult this team into major defensive contention. And they're getting there, but, even still, that would be something that I think that they should absolutely look at. Now, it's not realistic, so I just wanted to throw it out there. But again, it's like that's the type of move that I think could really put Baltimore over the top. Now, is there a player like Jaire Alexander on the D line? I think a lot of people would argue it's Quinn Williams. So, we probably have to see. But, at the end of the day, you have to look at those teams that are not going anywhere, because we could have a team win in week number 9 today that is kind of teetering on the edge of being a buyer, being a seller. And then, they're like, oh, hey, we want to actually move. We want to move guys and get guys back. And, we want to make those trades, but also get guys in. So then it becomes a little bit more of an interesting situation. But, Baltimore has a lot of guys that they could target. And over the course of the next couple of days, we're going to see just what positions they value. So we'll have everything covered for you. Rumors, updates, actual trades, and the whole 9 yards over here on Locked On Ravens. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show. On the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form for 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, we'll have our regular scheduled program, and Monday we'll have our regular show. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.